Welcome back, everybody, to the Slow Pitch. And this is one of those mini episodes where I'm just going to talk about a particular topic. What sparked this was I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who it sounded like he was having a difficult time making a decision on something. And so simply by asking some questions, it allowed him to take some actions. And what I noticed was his demeanor and his approach to life, if you will, his attitude towards life in general changed after he made a decision. And that sparked in my mind, which comes first, taking action or your attitude? What can drive the other more effectively? So let's get started.
You're listening to the Slow Pitch Podcast, a podcast about selling less and closing more.
So in this case, he had a decision he had to make and he was struggling with it. And I think part of his problem was I needed to make a decision. I think I'm making the right decision, but maybe I'm not. What if I am? What if I'm not? All these different opportunities in front of me. I just need to decide the right decision. And, some of the questions that I asked was like, well, what if you just made a decision? What's going to happen if you made decision A versus decision B versus decision C? What's going to happen for each of those decisions? Worst case, if you're wrong, what's going to happen then? And just by asking some of those questions, that started that whole conversation. But what I started to think about was he seemed to have this belief that he couldn't do things unless he made the right decision. And so, just to kind of lay some groundwork here, I kind of looked some things up here and I said, okay, what is a belief? And so what I thought was like, just let's make it really simple. Let's use Wikipedia. So I know that's not a great source of information always, but this is a pretty basic concept, right? What is their belief? And everybody kind of understands. And according to Wikipedia, it says an attitude that something is the case or that some proposition about the world is true. And that's basic, right? There's other variations of that definition, but in general, that's kind of what it means to have a belief, right? It's just an attitude that something is the case. Okay. Then I looked up an attitude. So how does an attitude fit in with a belief? And an attitude is really, from a Wikipedia standpoint, it's a positive or negative evaluation of people, objects, events, activities, and ideas. And it can be about something which is concrete or abstract, and it's usually formed from a person's past or present sometimes. To me, attitude is there's another definition I found too, which is kind of like a settled way of thinking or feeling about someone or something. I think about that in terms of making phone calls or doing a sales meeting and how that affects you as a person. So which comes first, your attitude about the subject, the concept, the thing you have to do, or the action itself? And so to me, it's very difficult. Like if I don't have a good attitude, am I going to pick up that phone? Maybe not. But if I start taking action and I start doing those things, will my attitude change? And I have a feeling, and just based on my experience, taking action, whether you want to do it or not, attitude-wise, will change your attitude. So I feel like action drives attitude. And some people will argue that concept, but I feel like action starts to change the way you think of things. So if you start taking action, you start making phone calls, and it goes successfully, your attitude towards the whole concept of making phone calls will change. It'll start to be more positive. But if you start making phone calls and those calls go poorly, I feel like your attitude's probably going to go more negative, right? Versus if you started out with some negative attitude and you start making phone calls, that attitude is going to portray itself or come out in your phone calls. So they go interchangeably. And I really feel like one kind of acts on the other, and then sometimes they're equal in some ways. But I do feel like, in my experience, that my actions of that I do drive how I feel. And I found this to be true with somebody else too, a friend of mine who was looking for a job, and he was really frustrated. He was like, I don't know where to look for a job. I don't know what to do. And I said to him, I had the same problem when I was looking for a job one time, many, many years ago. And I had my dad said to me, why don't you just do this? And he gave me one step to take, and I took the one step. And the next thing I know, I was like, oh yeah, then I can do this. And then and I started making different choices and taking different actions. And all of a sudden my attitude was totally different. And I started feeling less down about myself than I was feeling better about getting things done. And that's really what it comes down to. And so I think that's one thing that's really important, is understanding the difference between attitude and taking action. And the second thing that's, I think, is really to all of that is motivation. So people always feel like, well, I got to get motivated. I got to go get motivated. Well, there's no getting motivated, I'm sorry to say. So let's look at the definition of motivation. Motivation is basically what explains why people initiate, continue, or terminate a certain behavior at a particular time. That's pretty black and white. It's pretty bland of a definition. But basically what Wikipedia is saying is that it tells you why people are start, stop, or continue to do things that they're doing, right? Based on that, I feel as though knowing how actions can drive your attitude, I feel like both action and attitude drive your motivation. You'll feel motivated when you've taken action and your attitude started to change to the positive. All of a sudden, you'll start to feel more motivated to get more stuff done and do more things, just like I did when I started having to do my resume at one point a long time ago. Those types of actions start to drive doing the things that you want to do and drives your attitude to the better. So I hope that helps. If you're not sure which one comes first for you, start to think about, if I'm struggling because my attitude is down in the dumps and I don't feel positive about it, take 2 or 3 actions that you can do right now that will change your direction, and it'll also change some of your attitude over time. Just pay attention to how you feel about those steps you're taking and see if that makes a difference. I'd love to get feedback to hear what you guys think. And if you found this helpful, I'd love to hear that as well. Until next time, we'll see you guys later.
Thank you for listening to The Slow Pitch. Do you have a question about sales? Call or text your question at 608-708-SLOW. That's 608-708-7569. Or you can email them to questions@theslowpitch.com. Slow down and close more.
Thanks as always for listening today. If you like this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review. We really appreciate it. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Slow Pitch. We were mixed today, as always, by Johnny Polakis, and we were produced by High Gravity Studios. Music credits and other notes are in the show notes section on theslowpitch.com, and we'll be back with another episode soon.